Well, hello and welcome to this session. What I'm going to talk about today is something that I guess we almost take for granted, and that is compliance in an outsourced environment. I see it all the time in contracts. The contractor is to comply with all relevant legislation, regulation, and standards. But what does that actually mean? Now, the reality is this, that if you were insourcing or you were actually doing that activity in your organization, you would be responsible and accountable for the compliance against the regulations and the legislation and the standards. And what you should have, of course, is a compliance register, and you should be getting assurance that all of those compliance obligations are being met. But what we tend to do is we think, well, I've now outsourced that, so it's the contractor's responsibility in terms of the compliance with those particular standards. But the problem is this: in outsourcing, you have not reduced the accountability, or you haven't transferred the accountability for the impacts of a failure against that compliance. What I mean by that is that if the contractor undertakes an activity that results in, say, a significant impact on the environment, it's not the contractor that they're going to come looking at, or the regulators are going to come looking at, they're going to come and look at you. You will actually be given the fines. And yes, you could probably sue and pass those fines on or partially to the contractor, but the reality is this: you were asleep at the wheel. You can't simply just say, look, I've transferred all of those compliance obligations to the contractor. Wrong. What you've done is you've transferred the activity to the contractor, but you need to assure yourself that they are A, meeting the contractual obligations, but B, meeting the compliance obligations. Because here's the thing, there is a cost to compliance. What I actually advocate is that in every contract, there should be a compliance register which says, these are the things that you are to be compliant with. This is the evidence that you are to provide me. Give me a cost for that. That means that it's built into the contract. And you can also say, these are the assurance activities that I will undertake, so you know what the cost of managing that contract is. Because if you have outsourced something, an activity, where if that activity falls over, it's going to have a significant impact on your reputation, you don't want to just simply trust that the contractor's doing that. A throwaway line like, the contractor is to comply with all legislation, regulation, and standards is not enough. You really need to spell it out in your contracts. And you will start to see that the contracts obviously do cost more, but the reality is you're going to get a much better outcome. And your people are going to be safer, you're less likely to have damage to the environment, and you're less likely to see the ire of the regulators. So that's all I've got for this particular session, and as always, let's be careful out there.